Hello and welcome back to the Little Craft House. Today I thought I would bring you along with me whilst I create a new range of earrings for my market stalls. So we've recently just started stocking in our store some water transfer papers. These are the type that you put onto your clay and wash off with water. So I've done this a couple of times before, but I thought I'd bring you along today and show you guys how easy it is to use them. So let's get started. I've selected a range of our new transfers here. I'm probably not going to use all of these today, but I definitely will over the coming weeks. So make sure you also keep an eye out over on the Reels and Short sections of Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube. Right, let's get started. The polymer clay I'm using today is going to be Sculpey Primo, and we are using white. The biggest thing when using these water transfer papers is to make sure that you're using light coloured clay, so obviously white will work best. The main reason that white polymer clay is recommended is that it will show the colours off nice and brightly. So if you choose a lighter coloured clay, such as a light pink or an ivory, the colours can sometimes blend in a little bit and they're not quite as bright and vibrant as they are from the paper. Using the white polymer clay, I've found that the colours transfer almost identical across and there isn't much fading that happens at all. So I put my polymer clay through the pasta machine and I've taken it to about 1.5 to 2 mils thick. So I'm going a bit thinner than what I would normally do because I'm planning on putting resin on the top of these pieces once they're cured. So I do want them to be a little bit thinner so that once the resin's added, they're not too thick and heavy. We're going to be working on a acrylic tile today. If you have a ceramic tile that is of a smaller size, that would also work well, but I only have these large tiles. So I'm going to move my clay onto this tile to work on. So I just need to trim it down first. So having our clay on the acrylic tile is going to give us the ability to move it around and go to the sink and do all those extra steps. So next up, I'm going to get my sheet that I'm planning on working with. So we're going to do this one because it is super pretty, and we're just going to trim it down to being the size of this piece of clay. Perfect. Now we want to transfer this image onto the clay. So what we're going to do is put it face down onto the clay. And I haven't added anything to the clay, it's just as is. I'm going to smooth that image on. Slight bit of pressure, but nothing too much. Not going to squish and distort the clay. And then I like to just leave it for a couple of minutes just to allow those colours to transfer over. Okay, so we've moved locations now and are now located in the bathroom. So I've brought my clay with me. It's still just nicely sitting on there. Hopefully the image has transferred enough. Generally it doesn't take too long for it to happen, so should be good to go. And we're just going to run the tap with some cold water and just on a very slow stream. I might just zoom in just so that you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I would normally keep it running under, but I just want to show you. You can see how it's kind of going cloudy as the paper is removing. So with your finger, you can just keep it under the water and slide that off. I do like to try and keep some of that to the side because I don't want that all going down my drain. And just a gentle rub will remove the rest of the paper. And that image has transferred nicely. Look how bright it is. So next I like to just get a bit of paper towel and just give it a really gentle dab dry. So just get the bits of water that have built up around the edges. There's some of the paper there that wasn't attached to the clay. And we're just going to leave that for a couple of minutes just to dry out a bit more. Okay, so I've left this for a few minutes to dry. Sometimes you'll notice that a little bit of the fuzziness starts to come back through. That's okay. What you can do is after it is baked, we can re-wash them just to get off any of the little extra bits. But now I'm going to cut them. So I've got my cutters. I don't normally like cutting on a acrylic tile like this, but because it's stuck on there, we're going to cut them out and then remove the pieces rather than try and remove this whole piece now. I suppose I could try and remove the whole piece and then bond it to the tile that I work on, but then we'd have to remove it again. So that's just extra moving of the pieces that doesn't need to happen. So I'm just going to work on this. I'm going to cut some pieces out. So I can still neaten off a little bit around the edges now like I would normally do. I'm going to pop them onto a baking tray to get them ready for baking. And then afterwards we can of course sand them down and neaten them up anyway. Okay, so as I pull this up, I'm going to be super careful just in case I can get another couple of studs or smaller pieces cut from it. I'll be able to see once I've got it off the tile if there's any large enough gaps. Otherwise, I'm going to pop it to the side and I can show you something else that you can do with it. So there's our pieces. So if we had done this on a ceramic tile, we could just put that straight into the oven now. But as I said before, I don't have a small ceramic tile, so this one will not fit in my oven. So that's why I'm doing it this way. I'm going to use my flexi blade now to remove them off of this tile, and I am going to be very, very careful not to distort them as I pull it up. Right, so as usual, I like to make sure that I use up all the possible bits of clay that I can. Now, this one here, I've used a pretty good amount of it. I probably can't really get anything else out of it. What I will show you is how you can clean the clay. So I have some alcohol wipes here. These ones are 75% alcohol. You could also use isopropyl alcohol if you have some handy. And all I'm going to do is clean the clay off. So just very gently, just going to start rolling in circles and just giving a little rub, and it will clean the clay off. So sometimes with things like transfers and things, you can just scrunch your clay up, marble it through, and that's no issue. But if you don't always want to do that, so if you do want to clean the clay, this is a really good way to do it. I would then use this white clay to mix through other colors. If I was going to say lighten a color, do a color mix, because it's not going to be perfectly clean. It is going to have a little bit of a discoloration to it, but it just makes it a little bit more usable for me than marbling, because I don't really like to marble my scraps. Okay, so that's our first pieces done. I thought I would show you this one as well. So this is one that I'm pretty sure I shared over on Instagram, just in a time lapse doing some stripes. I've got a few tutorials for stripes here on YouTube, so you can scroll back to find those ones. But I've just created a nice little stripe here, and I had cut some off because I used it for a different project. This was what was left. And then I'm just going to get one of the water transfers and put it onto here. So you'll see the difference in how the colour works out behind as well when there is a coloured clay versus the white. And instead of running the transfer under the tap to remove the paper, I've used a little bowl of water with my finger to start with, and then I moved onto a paintbrush, and this way works just as well. It also helps save up all those little bits of paper that you don't want going down your drain. So I think because this transfer wasn't a full solid sheet and it wasn't a full solid sheet of colour underneath, it actually worked out really well, and I really love how these pieces turned out. So I thought I would show you what happens when you don't quite follow the rules properly. So I did share this the other week as well. It was my water transfer fail. So things started off like normal. I was trying to be, well, I was in a bit of a hurry, so I was trying to be a little bit clever, a little bit smart. Didn't actually work. So instead of bonding my clay to the tile, I decided just to do it on my hand, and I thought that it would work well. I think you can kind of see there the transfer has lifted off of the clay. So as I put it under the water, the paper literally just dissolves and it didn't transfer onto the clay properly. So as you can see there, it's just making a big mess and it didn't actually transfer properly. I've got big gaps, but I was still able to use it for the project that I wanted it for. So moral of the story is to make sure that you bond your clay to a tile when you run it under the water. Don't do it on your hand. Also, whilst we're talking fails, it's best to avoid using Fimo polymer clay. For some reason, Fimo is not really compatible with water, so therefore the results don't turn out the best when you're using Fimo. So best to stick with Sculpey or Cernit. So hopefully in this tutorial I have covered everything that you need to know and answered any questions that you may have had about using these water transfer sheets. When you purchase the transfers from us, you'll also receive an instruction card as well for you to refer back to. They are definitely something that is really super simple to use, and it's a great way to bulk out your stock if you're doing a market or a showcase where you need a lot of stock with a lot of detail. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of components that I still need to assemble. Some of these pieces that I have used a gloss glaze, some I've used a resin, and some I've left just as is. So sealing your water transfers is definitely recommended, but not essential. I actually like them just as is, nice matte finish. But totally up to you, whatever your normal preference would be. So thank you for joining me today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I shall see you again next week for another tutorial. See you then. Bye.